What's happening, friends? Welcome to Podcast Unlocked, episode 415. It is October 14th, 2019. This week, we are very pleased to be joined by a couple of developers from Obsidian. We're going to talk about The Outer Worlds, the big RPG that is on its way to us very, very soon. Stay tuned for all that and more coming up on Podcast Unlocked.
Podcast Unlocked.
All right. I don't know. I hope that there's like a weird thing going on with the graphics that I hope is not coming through in the final thing. But anyway, I'm Ryan McCaffrey, Brendan Tyrell, to my right today. And that's because we have two awesome guests to our left. Leonard Boyarsky, the co-director on The Outer Worlds at Obsidian, and Nitai Poddar, the narrative director, which...
I'll take director.
Take either one. Take either one. Either way, gentlemen, thank you both so much for being here. This is great. I know you're on your big media tour. You got to promote the game now, right? Got to get out there.
Yep.
So, Brandon, you and I have been keeping a close eye on this game. You actually went out when it was first announced. You were the first person at IGN to go down and see this game.
That's true.
And it is definitely captured the IGN audience interest. We've seen a lot of great reception to it. But guys, it's a busy Q4, a lot of games coming out. What's the Cliff's Notes version of what The Outer Worlds is, just to refresh everybody's memory?
The 30-second elevator pitch.
Yeah, Leonard.
It's a classic Obsidian RPG where players drive the story through their choices. It's a dystopia, a corporate dystopia. It's very much a retro kind of future. People have played these kind of games before, but we always put like a very specific kind of personal spin on it.
Yeah, it's. I got a chance to play a bit of it back around E3 time. I want to ask about the character creator, but there's a lot. Like if you've played Fallout New Vegas, for instance, from Obsidian, you will probably feel right at home. And in fact, Leonard, I was trying to do some prep for this interview, and I found a quote from you in 2004. Because your timeline, I guess, to preface this, Interplay, Blizzard. And
Troika was before Blizzard.
And then back to Obsidian. So you've been around Fallout and around. You mean co-creator of the original Fallout.
Yeah.
And you've been around the RPG, the Western RPG game, for a long time. And in 2004, you'd said, to be perfectly honest, I was extremely disappointed that we did not get the chance to make the next Fallout game. This has nothing to do with Bethesda. It's just that we've always felt that Fallout was ours, and it was just a technicality that Interplay, sorry, the accent there was, the emphasis was mine. It was just a technicality that Interplay happened to own it. It sort of felt as if our child had been sold to the highest bidder, and we had to just sit by and watch.
Wow.
And so I bring that up because, having played The Outer Worlds, you haven't seen it. I mean, there's definitely at least some general similarities to New Vegas.
Yeah.
So do you look at The Outer Worlds as your chance to make another Fallout game in a sense?
In a way, me and Tim and Jason and several other people were kind of off in a corner back at Interplay, making the game we wanted to make with really no input from anybody else. It was all just
That's nice.
Yeah, it's really great when I had been in the industry for like 2-3 years at that point, and like, oh, here, make a game, anything you want. And getting the chance to do that is very rare, and we just so that's why we felt a lot of ownership for it, because it was one of these things that was just our creative vision at the time. So there's a lot of just us in Outer Worlds as well, which is why there's a lot of similarities. But that style of game, plus, the chance to make an IP from the ground up, is definitely something that was really appealing and was enough to drag me away from Blizzard and have me do this.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, what's interesting is you have your thumbprint on the original Fallout, right? And then at some point during that sort of path through the series, it branched off with Bethesda and whatnot. But I'm curious, sort of with The Outer Worlds, this is sort of your interpretation moving out of Fallout. So I wanted to know really what The Outer Worlds learned from sort of your versions of Fallout, your past Fallout games.
That's interesting. I think for the most part, I feel like we've built a more expansive universe. If we get the opportunity to make more games in this universe, I feel like there's a lot of
worlds.
Yeah, there's a lot of different places you can go.
Yeah.
In Fallout, you're kind of you're stuck in the post-apocalyptic world. In the second one, we designed a lot of the second one before we left to form Troika. We tried pushing it forward to 70, 80 years later when civilization was building back up. But even that was kind of probably the furthest you could take it.
Yeah.
So I think there's that, and I think that just over the years we've looked back on what we did originally on Fallout, and just figured, if there was, I could tweak this or do this a little bit differently today. I mean, one of the biggest things was when we first made Fallout, you couldn't do a first person game that had a lot of fidelity, visual fidelity. Besides turn-based and all that, just in terms of I was the art director originally before I got involved in all the design. And I just wanted a certain amount of detail and just crispness to the art that you couldn't get in 3D. So that's why one of the reasons we made the decision to go with an isometric game. So the fact that somebody else got to do a 3D first person version of Fallout was, I wanted to do that.
Stings a little.
Yeah. So, on the other hand, I was able to play a Fallout game and have no idea what was going to happen when I was playing it.
For the first time ever. Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. And then, New Vegas,
done,
but
yeah.
I didn't say that.
Now, Nitai, Leonard touched on, creating something new. You're sitting down. What is the process when you have a blank slate for a new IP, a new world? We're kind of what's the pinpoint beginning of the universe, Big Bang Theory moment for this project?
Well,
from a narrative perspective.
From a narrative perspective, I wasn't actually there when Tim and Leonard got the idea and said, okay, whatever this idea is, it will turn into the Outer Worlds eventually. But I know that it can seem a little bit intimidating to have this blank sheet of paper and feeling like you could put anything on it. But actually there is a kind of method to our madness. We try to think structurally, because there are certain things we absolutely know we want the game to have, and therefore that we want the story to have. It is a game that emphasizes player choice. So we had to create some kind of antagonistic faction that you also have to have the opportunity to join. We wanted the players to feel like they could explore the world, they could take in the sights, they could learn about the setting by exploring it, by interacting with all kinds of colorful characters. So one thing we tried to do very early in the project was identify our sources of inspiration. Like, what are we looking for to kind of give us ideas and give this game some identity? The original Fallouts obviously had a lot to do with that. Obsidian worked on New Vegas, so there was a lot of Fallout from 1 and 2 and also New Vegas in the DNA of this game. But we went outside that also. We looked at Firefly, we looked at Deadwood, we looked at a lot of the art and history from the end of the 19th century to the early 20th century to kind of create this Gilded Age aesthetic. And then that went into the gameplay, that went into the art, it even went into the writing.
Yeah. Does that become like a sort of a snowball effect for you on the narrative side, where as these other pieces are starting to fall into place, is it just fueling ideas for you and as far as the story and the characters?
What it does is it gives us direction. It gives us a kind of core. We know where the aesthetic sits. We know that it draws from Firefly. We know that it draws from Fallout. We know that it draws from a lot of industrial, Gilded Age, robber baron-esque ideas of capitalism and corporations. So that's our direction. That's kind of the framework of the narrative. And then, yes, from drawing from that source, we can come up with all kinds of characters. We can come up with our quests, our setting. Everything kind of draws from that.
Do you want to tell them about your favorite way to play the game?
Oh, I think I already have. Yeah.
Because I'd be curious to hear their take on sort of.
When you guys were nice enough to have me up to the studio for the reveal, the thing that I really left with, and Leonard, I don't actually know if you remember, we had a really awesome conversation about comedy and humor and writing humor into a game and how hard it is, especially in a video game, because you can't really hit momentum. Pacing is tough in a video game in general.
Especially when it's not linear and players can make a ton of different choices.
Absolutely, yeah. And in addition to pacing being tough, humor is notoriously hard to get right in video games. But I left with the impression that you really designed the game around that sort of idea of player choice, and one of those player choices that they can do is just to be a total moron, or maybe not moron, but an idiot, the naive hero. And I say that I think of Han Solo without the charm, or Nathan Fillion without the wit. Really, yeah. It's just
that.
What's that?
So yeah, being able to play a dumb character and set your intelligence to low and just going the funny route.
Yeah.
You mentioned those characters. I think internally among the writers, the inspiration for the dumb archetype was Zab Brannigan.
Oh, perfect.
Plus Jane from Firefly. So just smash those two characters together.
Because
for some reason, let them captain a ship, and there you go.
we really didn't want to go the monosyllabic route that we went in Fallout. So we wanted to try something a little bit different. So you're basically just clueless.
Yeah. And what I really liked about it is your companions and the NPC quest givers and all that. Like you had illustrated pretty well that they remember these stupid choices you make to the point where when you originally approach them, they're like, "Oh, hero, the galaxy is on fire. You're here to save us." And then after 3 or 4 or 5 dumb choices in a row, they're just like shaking their keys in front of you like a baby. So I do love the idea that, you know, you build this own narrative with your character by the choices that you make. And I love by the end of the game, just no one trusts you with a weapon at any kind. They're like, "Oh, that's a sharp object." You know.
That's why we like to say that it's a player-driven story as opposed to a story that gives you choices.
Yeah.
The way, even beyond just the choices, the way we wanted players to be able to play the game any way they wanted.
Yeah.
Any kind of hero or character they could conceive of, we wanted to support that, and to support it in a way that didn't feel like we were trying to kind of keep nudging you back in a certain direction or another.
Back toward the hero type. Is that harder to do? I mean, you brought up a great point, the distinction between a player-driven game and a game that gives you choices as your player. Because I remember, I figure in the latter, you go to a quest giver, you can choose A, B, or C, and depending on that choice, brings off, you know, your branching options. But in what you're describing is the choice that you make sort of changes what the NPC then, how they then interact with you later on. So it seems like there's a sub-layer of branching optimization that goes along with it.
Well, me and Tim have been doing this for a very long time. So
have you?
Nitai, how would you answer that since this is your first time?
Get right up on that microphone too. Bring it close to you so we can hear every word you're saying.
How's that?
That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's a complex process because yes, we do have to support the player's ability to play just about any character we want. You want to be a benevolent good guy. You can be like a kind of mercenary that's only in it for the money. You can be a total psychopath. You can just play an idiot if you want. And they have to be cohesive, consistent choices that we offer throughout the game. And we also have to like mask the fact that NPCs still have quests to give you, right?
What do you mean by mask?
Well, imagine in a typical RPG, the way branching narrative is going to work is you get a couple of choices. They illustrate your character's attitude, and the NPC just gives you the quest anyway.
Yeah.
So it tends to feel a little bit like flavor. We have to do both. NPCs have quests to give you, but the way they express those quests to you, the way you accept those quests, the way they even talk to you, has to react to your personality. It has to react to the factions you've joined. Sometimes it even reacts to your reputation. So the answer is like, how do we do that from a narrative perspective? We just kind of have to do everything.
Yeah.
We have to cover the basics, right? Every NPC has a specific purpose in the world, and that purpose needs to be strong enough so that any character coming up to talk to that NPC at any point in the game, no matter what direction they come in, because as you said, we can't reasonably predict what the player has done before this. It still has to work. It still has to make sense. But at the same time, we want them to feel reactive. We want them to feel like they remember your choices. We want them to feel like organic, real characters. And this is something that we're really hoping players will enjoy about our game is you can talk to anybody in this game, and they're more than just quest givers. They have personalities, they have backstories, probably have some funny line or two. They have something to give you so that when you go and talk to someone, you're not really metagaming. You don't feel like, oh, I'm just here to collect whatever quest you have to give me and I'm going to go on my way. It's like part of your story.
I mean, that's everything that Nitai just said, but in a very general sense, it's kind of like we outline the game and then start building up the characters. So these characters, obviously, they have the quests, but it's more, you know, if I came to talk to this character, this NPC is a specific type of character, how are they going to react? So then we just start kind of riffing on that. And it's a lot of fun coming up with the different ways. And that's where the humor comes from.
Yeah.
It's just, us cracking each other up. And then when we get Tim to laugh, we know we're on the right path.
So it sounds like it's like the whose line is it anyway of video game
you have a
design,
role-
where it's
a
like you
little
got a
bit,
scenario and then we're
There
going
is a lot of that. Like early in the game, we were trying to figure out where is the humor? Where does it sit? Is it more Firefly? Is it more Simpsons? Is it more Futurama? Is it something way darker than that? Is it Coen Brothers? And the answer is yes. It's all of it.
Yes.
I would love to see a Coen.
But the process is the more we experiment, the more we figure out what works. The more we figure out what works, the easier it gets to write more of this kind of stuff. So a lot of the writing we did early in the project was just, let's just find out how we define our humor. And the answer to that definition is what makes everybody else in the office laugh and have a good time.
Right.
It's a very organic process that way.
And at the heart of all this is, of course, whatever character you make. So the thing that struck me when I sat down to play with the game a while back is the character creator is deep. Like if you're like a Fallout fan of the more recent 3D games, you will be very happy with you have an immense amount of choice at the beginning of the game. So where do you draw the line with because you guys have well over a dozen traits and skills and things to play with.
One of the things we were doing there, we have the thing where the way you spend points is different from a lot of other RPGs, at least until you get to 50. We wanted to kind of have a kind of cascading thing where even though you do have a lot of choices up front, you're not making all choices about your character. It's a couple levels in or several levels in before you start to specialize. You don't have to pick perks up front. So we kind of wanted this thing where and then of course flaws. You're developing your character as you go and further defining who you are in the world through play style and what kind of character you are in terms of what kind of lines you're going to pick when you're talking to an NPC. We just wanted to kind of even though there's a lot of depth, like you're saying, we wanted a way for players who didn't want to go too deep into it to just jump right in as well.
Yeah. Do you prefer that sort of like upfront in the idea, the pantheon of character creation systems, the idea that you sort of loosely define what you're going to be throughout the game up front versus something that's sort of like more like a Skyrim or where you organically develop based on your actions that you choose? Because Outer Worlds does a little bit of both, right? Like one of my favorite things about it is if you get particularly a nasty bite from a space dog, then you are afraid of space dogs moving forward, right? Which is such a cool idea. But a good chunk of that character creation happens up front. Do you find like there's value in that versus other approaches you could take?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we learned from Fallout way back in the original Fallout was, you could put a bunch of points into energy weapons and not find an energy weapon for half the game. So we kind of wanted to avoid that this time around. And those are the kind of things after doing this over and over again, we're trying to hone it down to, we want you to make choices up front that are meaningful immediately. And then as you go, they become, you get more choices as you go that become more meaningful as you go, as you're creating your characters, you're moving along.
To that point, it is understandable to get a bit of choice paralysis, even in a game like Skyrim, where like, oh, I have all these options. If I put points in this now, am I just going to miss out later on? Am I doing it wrong?
Yeah, especially up front, right?
Right.
It's like buying a timeshare you haven't seen yet. You
Right.
just don't know what you're going to
Exactly.
get.
And our goal is, our goal is that you can really play anything. Like you want to be a generalist and just put points anywhere, the game is still viable. You can do it. You want to be an absolute specialist in just diplomacy and just talking to people. We have a great path through the game for that too. So we've kind of emphasized that there is no correct way to place your points. Now, and this is a perspective from narrative, but the way I like to think about character creation, for me, character creation done right is if you look at the character creation screen and you feel inspired to make a character that expresses something that you want to play. If you look at all the options and you say, I want to be a heroic gunslinger that's really good at lying and is an excellent leader and leads through inspiration, you can do that. Like if the character creation process inspires in you the desire to role play, then I consider that successful.
How do you achieve that?
How do I achieve that desire to role play?
That desire to create a character creation system that speaks to a player on a menu.
So some of that is going to be down to our, there are two questions.
Sorry, I didn't mean to pull out the hard
this is
hitting
good.
questions.
No.
I'm interested to hear this.
I mean, these are
two things happening here.
Leonard starts taking notes.
I believe that just about anybody who plays video games and enjoys having some kind of a player fantasy is already drawn toward role playing.
Yeah.
our character creation system has its roots in old school role playing. I know Tim is a big fan of GURPS, Steve Jackson games. So like the pen and paper style exists to give a medium to a player who wants to express an idea. So we have taken that as kind of our skeleton. And some of that exists in Fallout as well with the special stats system and everything. So the goal from the outset is players have a fantasy of a kind of hero they want to play, even if it's somebody completely mundane and normal. And we create a system that allows them to do that. Now, how do you make that system fun? How do you make it engaging? Some of that is down to our UI. And I think our UI team did a really good job making that feel good. I think some of it, our narrative team worked on making the character creation process part of the story itself. When you make your character, your ally in the beginning, Dr. Phineas Wells, is stealing you from a ship. And he's kind of going through the ship manifest saying, no, oh, this one looks good, this one. And everything he says is a commentary on your stat selection.
But it's also positive reinforcement.
It's mostly positive reinforcement.
You did a great job making this character.
Like
so I'm
if you
going to
set
bust
your
it out.
dexterity to high, it's like, oh, you could be really good. You're a sharpshooter. I could use that.
Yeah.
If you set your intelligence to low or your strength to low, he's like, oh man, maybe you won't digest our food too well. That's okay. You know, so like he's reacting.
How many VO lines did you have to record for that?
300 something. And the voice actor killed it.
Really?
But
Nitai wrote them, so he deserves the praise on that one.
But the point is, by having this reinforcement of an NPC talk to you as you're creating your character, we are trying to reinforce the idea that this is a role-playing game and we are already responding to your choices.
Yeah.
So it's okay. There's no wrong choice. Just play whatever you think is cool.
That's awesome.
And this gets to something that I've heard sort of, I don't think anybody's like, it's not a thing, but I've seen this mentioned where some people are like, oh, because Leonard, you had mentioned a while back that, you know, this is not a Witcher 3 150 hour type of deal. Like it's a much more replayable through all these player driven choices. You know, is that I feel like people think they want 150, like they want more for their money, but in your game, you're going for it through a unique experience each time based on the player choice. Yes.
Yeah, and we really wanted to maximize our resources and time we had to develop this game, so we made a choice to have a smaller scoped game. One of the things that we're seeing there is that when people finish the game, they want to jump right back in. They don't feel like the last third of the game was a slog that they would just never want to do again, or like, you know, you never get to a point where like, isn't this game over yet? I just feel like it's if it's tighter, it's smaller, it's more it's easier for us to craft and not have to, you know, just kind of like shove in a bunch of content every corner of a giant map. So it's a much more handcrafted experience.
Do you think that, and I'm going to use the phrase proof of concept, but that's not what I mean by it. Do you think that the smaller, tighter Outer Worlds experience is sort of setting you guys up to really flesh out the world, that you could potentially go in the, like Ryan said, 150-hour, you know, Witcher 3, Fallout 4, or, you know, Ubisoft open world?
I think some of it has to do with how people enjoy the game, whether they feel like it's a valuable experience, or whether they feel like, you know, oh no, I wanted this to be twice as long.
Right.
You know, we've played it several times. I've played it 3 or 4 times. I think Tim's on his 16th playthrough. And he's still, you know, laughing and finding things he hadn't seen before. So I think it's a really great experience. I'll just be interested to hear how players enjoy it, or, you know, what the feedback from them is.
Well, on that note, I always love asking developers this, like especially in a game like this. Can you guys off the top of your head, either one of you or both of you, have like a crazy anecdote from playtesting, like something either unexpected or hilarious that happened in the course of playtesting the game, where it's just maybe something that from a design side you just either didn't plan for or didn't expect? Like, is there any sort of weird stories from playtesting?
Talk about the mandibular rearranger.
No, go ahead.
Sure.
Go for it. No, go for it.
I like where this is going already.
Mandibular rearranger. So we have science weapons in our game, and there is a selection of science weapons which have cool, wacky effects, like one of which is the shrink ray, because why would you not want to build that if you're
Which the voice actually gets higher, the pitch of the voice gets higher or lower.
Yep.
Which
that was a suggestion that came from our QA team, and we all looked at ourselves and we said, we should totally do that. So yes, you can have. Anyway, the mandibular rearranger came out of a bug where, for some reason, NPCs that you attacked, their faces would get wildly warped in unpredictable ways, and like the bone structure would just go what? So
Oh my God.
I think was it our
They were
designers?
posting up on Slack. People, especially QA, was posting pictures of these horrific-looking, nightmare-inducing images of characters, and we're all, oh, we should do that. We should make that happen on purpose.
So the mandibular rearranger is a science weapon, which if you swing at someone, will actually rearrange their face permanently.
That's fantastic.
Into something randomized and horrifying and nightmare-inducing.
And this was all based off a
bug.
A bug, right? Yeah, that's now literally a feature.
Yeah. I love that.
You made the bug to feature hammer. I'm sure every
that's so
developer
good.
wants the keys to that one.
So we'll let you guys go in a few minutes. I know you've got a game to finish, game to promote, but Nitai, I wanted to ask you about, it's funny, we were going to cover this on Unlocked here last week. We ran out of time, but you may have seen the Writers Guild of America decided to leave video games out of their awards, out of their recognition this year. They're dropping the video game category. They say they're leaving the door open to have it again. But you know, as a narrative designer, as someone who's, I mean, this has got to sting a little bit, right? I mean, you know, because games are an important, viable. As significant as film or TV, and as someone who does this for a living, how do you feel about this?
It's disappointing, not just because, well, it's always nice to compete, and it's always nice to like throw your hat in a ring and see what comes out. But from my perspective, just speaking as a writer, it's always nice to share your stuff. And the Writers Guild of America in the past, they have supported video game writing. Obsidian was nominated last year with Pillars of Eternity 2. We were looking forward to making another shot at that nomination. I can't speak for that decision. I don't know what went into it. I know they still support the Video Game Caucus, and there are many members of the Writers Guild who do specialize in video games. I was just hoping to personally like get them our script, see what they thought of it, make a few people laugh. Like that's always the point of view of the writers. You do what you do because you want other people to look at it, enjoy it, have a good time. And if it doesn't win an award, that's fine. But it's just disappointing to not be able to compete that way. That said, I do feel like there are many ways to be recognized and to compete for recognition now more than ever before. There's VGAs at the end of the year. There's the BAFTAs are very well respected and highly competitive.
Yeah.
So we will see what happens. I think it's unfortunate, but it's not really something I can directly speak to because I'm not really sure.
So you see it as more just kind of a speed bump than any sort of.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a missed opportunity for both of us. I think I would have loved to share our script with the Writers Guild. I imagine we would have been competitive this year, but
yeah, I was really disappointed because our writers really knocked it out of the park. You guys did a fantastic job on this game, and it would have just been nice to be in there.
Especially something so different, right? You don't get comedy RPGs very often.
True.
So, yeah, I hear you on that.
Very true. Now, Leonard, you also were a significant part of one of my favorite games of the last 10 years, which is Diablo 3. Mm-hmm. You were the lead world designer there. So I just, where do you want to see, now that you're not there anymore, where are you kind of hoping to see an inevitable Diablo 4 go? I know we're off brand here for a second, but how can I not? I have to take the opportunity to ask you about Diablo because you were a key part of Diablo 3.
There's a lot of stuff we were actually talking about. I don't know if they're going to keep any of it. Even throughout the development of Diablo 3 about, where we could go with the series.
Yeah.
I'm not there anymore. Chris Metzen isn't there anymore. I think some of the people who are there are still working on whatever is going to come next. So I'm just as in the dark as everybody else.
Yeah.
But I would hate to speculate in case I remember something that.
That's fair.
I do have, my preferences for where I'd like to see it go. I think we kind of seeded a couple things that I'd like to see pay off at some point, but who knows?
Like Ryan said, I mean, I loved Diablo 3. I loved Reaper of Souls.
That was huge.
I thought that ship got righted in a really nice way. And, there are all those little dangling story bits like Imperius and Chang and like all that stuff that I would love to see pay off as well. And who knows, maybe this is the year we actually get an announcement. I know every year I say this is the year Diablo 4 is announced at BlizzCon.
Yeah, BlizzCon. Blizzard's got maybe some other
we don't have to talk about what's going on in the news with Blizzard.
So back to you guys. I of course also for those of you who may have either forgotten or what have you, but you are some of the newest Microsoft employees. The acquisition announced a year ago of Obsidian being acquired by Microsoft. So how have things changed? How's the vibe at the studio? How is it being Microsoft employees?
Well, technically, we're still employees of Obsidian. Obsidian is a subsidiary, I guess. I'm not quite sure the business, the way it's all structured. But it really hasn't changed for us. I don't think it's changed much for anybody, but it really hasn't changed for us because we're working with Private Division on this game still.
Right.
They've been with us from the very beginning. This is going to be published by them still. They've been a fantastic publisher all the way through. So we'll see what happens after this.
I don't know if it was sort of any sort of concession for the fact that the Microsoft acquisition happened, but importantly for gamers, this game is launching directly into Xbox Game Pass. So if you're a Game Pass subscriber, you'll be able to play it as just part of your subscription right from day one.
Which is so great because there are so many people out there that don't want to jump into a first-person RPG, right? Or wouldn't have this game wouldn't have been sourced to them sort of organically the way it will with Game Pass. Do you guys do you have feelings on that about how this system is allowing you to sort of spread the good word of the Outer World?
I think it's really great because one of the things we wanted to do with this game was to kind of open it up to hopefully a bigger segment of the market. We really feel like we're RPG evangelists, and we really feel like if more people got to play, a game that had real reactive story, a lot more people would really be into it. But like we talked about earlier, it could be a little bit daunting. You seeing the character creation. So in that aspect, people who could jump in there and play around with the game, I think they'll find something they really like. And that was also part of our not making a 100-hour epic, where it's like people feel like if I've invested, 10, 15 hours, 20 hours, whatever in this game, I want to know that, I can see the end in sight. I don't want to be like, I have to keep playing this. It's kind of like, how it is. Once you've started down the road of playing a game, you don't want to give it up. So it's kind of like you're trapped in there. But I really hope it opens up the, the genre to more people, because I feel like, obviously I've been doing this for a long time, but I'm sold on what a great thing a story-driven RPG is, or a player-driven story of an RPG is.
Yeah, I think this is a good Game Pass title. It's the length is just enough that if you want to experiment with it and pick it up, it's not like you're committing to Witcher 3. It's like,
right.
I mean, I was playing
25 hours in, you're leaving the tutorial.
I was going to say I was playing Persona 5, but I was really committing the next 3 months of my life to Persona. Like, we're not doing that. Great game, but it's a huge commitment.
Right.
Outer Worlds is not like that. And it's also, I would say it's pretty beginner friendly. Like, if you're experienced, play on hard mode. But if you just want to dive in, experience a good story, maybe try out an RPG and see the kind of game that doesn't, we don't punish you for taking the wrong choices. We just want to role play with you through the game. If that sounds like a good idea for you. It's not a huge commitment to play it on Game Pass, I think.
All right. So the last, absolute most important question before you guys go.
Yeah.
Outer Worlds, Outer Wilds. Nobody blinked.
This has been.
Do you guys confuse it as much as
the
we
last 4 months?
We don't confuse it as much. We were.
I can imagine.
We went through a ton of names, and we settled on that one. And they were supposed to come out along. They were supposed to be way clearer. We were supposed to be way clear of them.
But then development happened.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Nitai Poddar, Leonard Boyarsky, thank you guys so much. The Outer Worlds is out on October 25th in any place you can buy video games, but also Xbox Game Pass. So there's no excuse not to play this game. I've really enjoyed what I've played. I know, Brandon, you feel the same way. So, good stuff. Congratulations on launch, guys. Thank you. Can't wait to see, can't wait to just dig more into this thing. I don't even know what kind of character I want to do first. Like, I like to be able to specialize. So I love that that's being supported. I think I might go like heavy conversationalist, like to be able to accomplish things.
Silver Tongue Devil.
Oh yeah. Because not a lot of RPGs let me do that. That seems like a thing that had fallen by the wayside in a lot of ways in favor of action. So
that's great. And real quick, how do you guys play it?
I always start by playing a talking stealth character, but that's half because I'm having to test it out as well. No, but I like that, and exactly, I like the fact that we're still supporting that. To me, that's a core pillar of a great RPG like this, is to let players have that talking character. So I always dive in there because that's where you get the most story or get the most character development, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
I've always been in favor for this game of science and leadership. I think those are the two skill sets that are the most Outer Worlds-esque. They're the most pulpy. You get to have cool science weapons, and you get to order your companions around. Always a good time.
Yeah, and I'm going to play it as a beautiful idiot that just runs screaming down the hallway towards the stormtroopers.
Fantastic.
Guys, thank you so much. We'll be right back with some more Unlocked right after this. Welcome back, and yes, it's just me, Ryan McCaffrey. Brandon is doing some other video game capture stuff with the Outer Worlds devs. I want to thank them, Leonard and Nitai. That was great. I hope you enjoyed that segment. It's a lot of fun sitting down with those guys, and just it's always fascinating to me to talk to professional game developers who just think about these things, think about games and the way we approach games in a very different way than we as players do. So thanks to them, and I am very much looking forward to playing more of the Outer Worlds. So we got Miranda had another commitment. She's got another project. I don't know where Mark is, can't find him. Destin's busy, and then Brandon, as I said, is off with them. So you're stuck with me. Sorry. Unfortunately, there's some stuff I want to talk about. There's some good stuff to cover here. First up, you've probably heard about this because it is trending basically worldwide. Fortnite literally imploded on purpose. So you may have seen the video. If not, we've got it on IGN. Is the end of the world, the end of the map in Fortnite. Everything just got sucked into a black hole of nothingness. And out of that, what will come? Maybe a chapter 2, a season 2, whatever it's going to be. But there will be new Fortnite and probably not the same map, right? I mean, it's probably going to be something new, which is what's really interesting to me about that is the boldness of it. In that, and in fact, I salute Epic because, to take arguably, if not the most successful game and the hottest game on the planet, one of the top 3, and to effectively kill it for temporarily, but it is purposely not playable for the time being, but they have created an event out of it. And, the key now, I think, for them will be managing how long to keep it offline. It's going to be a tough line to walk, I would imagine, between the idea of keeping it offline and having it be like this mysterious event versus people just going, okay, I don't care anymore. I'm done with Fortnite. Bye, Fortnite. There's I don't think anything like this has ever really been done as an event like this in a game before, not in any MMORPG that I can think of. So I salute the boldness of it by Epic, and I'll be very curious to see not only what comes back, but what the reaction to it is when the game does come back and in what shape that it's going to take. Next this week, just a couple more things to tell you about before we get rolling. Thankfully, the interview ended up going. I had planned to talk to them for 15 or 20 minutes, but we ended up chatting for almost 35 minutes, which was time well spent. That was really good stuff. So let's see. Text filters. This is new this week. Text filters are coming to Xbox Live. Microsoft announced new customizable text filters for the Xbox platform, giving gamers more control over the type of content they see in their private messages, both from friends and non-friends, when they are engaged in the Xbox community. With this update, gamers will be able to choose from 4 different levels of filtration: friendly, medium, mature, and unfiltered. Hey, I host that show. So they can decide based on their personal preferences what's acceptable and what isn't in the text-based messages they receive across Xbox Live. And here's an important one for those of you who are parents out there. Parents will also have the ability to manage the settings for their child's account with this update. So I say thank you to Microsoft for this. I think this is a good thing. I mean, for me, I personally don't even allow messages from non-friends, but for most people that probably do, this is a great way to help probably cut down on the junk and the stuff that you don't want to see. So another gamer-friendly move from Microsoft. It's one of those little things. Just, it's not like there have been a ton of, the big stuff, backwards compatibility, but this is one of those little ones, these 100 little things that Microsoft has done and continues to do to make the Xbox platform and the Xbox ecosystem a better place for everybody. And then the last big news story I wanted to make sure to cover this week is this one, a new game, but an apparently new non-Hitman game is in development at IO Interactive. IO and Warner Brothers, again partnering, they have announced, because Warner Brothers, if you remember, IO was owned by Eidos, which became Square Enix, or, Eidos was bought by Square, so IO became a Square Enix studio, and they did a Hitman game or 3 there, and then IO actually spun off, they left, they were able to negotiate their exit from Square, and they were able to retain the Hitman IP in that. So it was a clean, sort of no fault divorce that they separated. And we've gotten 2 new Hitman games, the episodic season 1, and then most recently a season 2, Hitman 2, which I reviewed and quite liked. And that Hitman 2 was published by Warner Brothers, so they are going to partner again on a, quote, new console and PC game experience that seems to be separate from what they've previously created. While they're keeping tight-lipped on what exactly is in the works, we do know that IO Interactive's 2 studios in Copenhagen and Malmo will be developing the game. IO Interactive CEO Hakan Abrak said in a press release that the teams are currently staffing up to begin development in earnest. Quote, as we embark on this exciting project to create a new universe for IOI together with Warner Brothers, we're currently looking for ambitious talent to join our team in Copenhagen and Malmo studios for this extraordinary journey. So if you're wondering, well, okay, what is IO Interactive's track record outside of Hitman? It's a bit of a mixed bag, I would say. Their most recent, it's been a long time since they've done a non-Hitman game. Their last one was Kane and Lynch 2. And then obviously before that, there was the first Kane and Lynch. And that was, if you remember, that was the 360 era. They had really hoped that was going to become a new pillar for them, this sort of co-op driven shooter. It's funny how, trends and waves go in gaming, and not just for gamers, but for game designers. Kane and Lynch was in that same era as Army of Two, these sort of high budget, almost blockbuster movie-like co-op action games that have kind of went away. They kind of went away. And Kane and Lynch, the first one wasn't great. The second one was a little better, but it never quite lived up to its potential, I would say, of these two kind of anti-heroes. But yeah, Kane and Lynch and Kane and Lynch 2 were the last 2 non-Hitman games. And then before that, if you're an old school Xbox gamer like me, you may remember Freedom Fighters on the original Xbox, which was a really good sort of action strategy game. And a little fun fact about that game, it was an original Xbox game. Remember, so this is the regular CRT non-HD era. And if you had an HD TV, it was 480p was what that was HD in the Xbox era, was just the regular 4:3 aspect ratio television, but progressive rather than interlaced. And the game Freedom Fighters supported actual 720p HD out of the original Xbox, which very, very, very few games did back then. And in fact, because very few people had the TVs, and obviously the box didn't have a ton of horsepower relative to the 360 that came after it. But there you go. Freedom Fighters was good stuff, and then the Kane and Lynch games. So I'll be very, very eager to see exactly what this new universe is in this new game that IO is creating. Okay, my friends, that will do it. Let's say, well, you know what? Let's see. I'm trying to think if I should do a loot box question by myself. or not. Yeah, let's save it. I'll save it for another time with the rest of the crew, so that it's not just me babbling for too long. But thankfully, I'm very used to podcasting solo. That's how I first started. Back when my Xbox OXM podcast started, KOXM, it was just me for the beginning. And I learned a lot. If you please do never go back and listen to those initial episodes where it was just me. They're really bad. Hopefully this one's less bad, but I'm Ryan McCaffrey. Again, thanks to Brendan Tyrell. And then big thanks to Leonard Boyarsky and Nitai Poddar as well from Obsidian Entertainment. I congratulate them on the upcoming launch of The Outer Worlds. I can't wait to dig into it myself. We'll have the review on IGN whenever the review embargo lifts, which I have no idea when it is. But I am heading off to a preview event myself, so I'm going to be hitting the road here shortly. But we should be back at regular time next week. So until then, happy gaming, my friends. And we, not just I, we will see you next week.